Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Wolf. I'm Executive Vice President of Policy and External Affairs at the Edison Electric Institute. Welcome to EEI 2021 and our path to net zero. It's my honor to introduce you to Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a former two-term mayor of South Bend, Indiana, a graduate of Harvard University, and an Oxford Rhodes Scholar. Secretary Buttigieg began his public service career in the United States Navy Reserve, becoming a lieutenant following his deployment to Afghanistan in 2014. Now serving as Secretary of the United States Department of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg and the Biden administration are prioritizing our nation's infrastructure as we continue our path toward a clean economy. Recently, the Secretary visited Atlanta to promote the administration's plan to invest in many of the infrastructure sectors that are critical to our industry, with policies that support transportation electrification, clean energy, and broadband for all Americans, as well as the millions of jobs these projects will create across the country. He also was recently in Memphis, where he discussed the economic impacts of aging infrastructure, and in Pittsburgh, where he highlighted how modernizing America's infrastructure is an investment in our economy that will enhance competitiveness and create new jobs. Secretary Buttigieg has a strong track record of working across the aisle, and he's an innovative leader who understands and supports the public-private partnerships that are needed to build back better. Thank you for joining us, Secretary Buttigieg, and we look forward to hearing from you now.
Hello, I'm U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Thanks for inviting me to say a few words, and most importantly, thanks for all you do to power our country. As with most core infrastructure, most Americans don't think about power much until something goes wrong. Yet during these past 15 months of the pandemic, brave essential workers across America's utilities made sure that we could still keep our lights on and connect virtually with everyone and everything we needed most. Now, as we look ahead, your partnership in moving us toward cleaner sources of electricity has never been more important. The Biden-Harris administration views climate change as a defining challenge of our time. The President laid out our ambitious target to cut U.S. carbon emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. That's going to take all of us working together. We know that transportation, which is the largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. economy, must play a major role in the solution. At our department, we've added climate as a criterion in our discretionary grant programs and made it a focus of our innovation work. The Federal Highway Administration has announced our 5th round of new alternative fuel corridors. These designations represent progress toward building out a national network of EV charging and alternative fueling stations to support long-distance travel. We've also issued new guidance to help states use their rights of way to host transmission lines, build renewable energy projects, and support EV charging infrastructure. But the real transformation, with the scale that we need to rebuild our country's infrastructure fully, comes with the President's American Jobs Plan. We see it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to meet this consequential moment and win the future for America. It means fixing and modernizing our transportation system. It means empowering the U.S. to win the electric vehicle market, from helping automakers establish stronger domestic supply chains to building a network of 500,000 EV chargers all over the country, including in rural areas. And we know that affordability is just as important as accessibility. Americans living in rural areas and low-income households often have the longest commutes, which means they stand to gain the most by fuel savings. The President's plan aims to make EVs an affordable option for middle and lower-income families by providing new rebates and incentives to buy American-made EVs. And privately driven vehicles are only part of the solution. This plan calls for replacing 50,000 diesel-powered transit vehicles with modern, energy-efficient electric-powered vehicles and electrifying at least 20% of the yellow school bus fleet. We're also aiming to electrify the federal fleet, including the Postal Service. It's not enough to get people into different kinds of cars. We need to make it safer and easier to get around whether you're using a car or not. The plan doubles funding for public transit and invests billions to improve road safety, including for people who walk, bike, or use a wheelchair. The investments in the American Jobs Plan stand to benefit every American, but will especially help lift communities that have been most affected by pollution and climate change. 40% of the plan's climate investments will go to such communities. One piece of that is the plan's Healthy Ports program, which will mitigate the pollution impacts of legacy technologies at our ports and position the U.S. as the global leader in clean freight. Our work to combat climate change is not just a question of what could be lost if we fail. It's a question of what can be gained when we succeed. The transition to a cleaner economy means millions of good jobs, union jobs, retrofitting existing assets and building new ones, making our infrastructure more resilient, installing electric vehicle chargers, and building the electric vehicles that are going to use them. As you know, it also matters enormously where the energy comes from that goes into our electric vehicles. The American Jobs Plan would do more to help us transition to a clean energy future than any law has to date. I'm understandably focusing on the transportation pieces, but it's also critically important to recognize that the plan will do things like modernize our power grid, replace every lead water pipe in the country, and bring affordable broadband to every American. The basic principles of the American Jobs Plan fit well with a quote from your organization's namesake, Thomas Edison. Edison said, "There is a way to do it better. Find it." That's our goal here. We are finding ways to build back better than what we had before. And we see you as critical partners in that effort. Thank you for your work, and I hope you have a great convention.